Hey, thanks for joining us, guys. Today is another bad weather day in Atlanta. It warmed up from yesterday, but the rain has moved in. It's overcast. It's misting everywhere. There's not many options for where to fly today. So I'm going to address some of the questions that I've gotten in the comments over the last couple of weeks. In the past, I've always made a point to respond to every comment every time I make a video. I'll go in there and respond to every comment for the first couple of days. But when I'm making a video every single day, I don't really have the time to go and do that. So I thought that I would backtrack in a lot of the questions that I thought a good number of people would find helpful. I'm going to go through and answer some of those questions. So let's get started. All right, I got a whole list that I pulled off of my computer and put on my phone so that I got them nice and handy and ready for you guys. And so the very first question that I'm going to go with today, and I apologize to everybody's YouTube name, I'm probably going to say it wrong, but Wedgeman351 asks, could you do a video with raw DVR footage when you're diving buildings and drop under the car parks? I saw it in the Waiting for the Weekend video. Don't you get bad breakup and risk going into failsafe when you do this? Anyways, keep ripping. All right. So the answer to that is yes. When you're going behind concrete and metal structures and buildings of any sort, there is a risk of RF problems. But what I always do to mitigate that risk is go and you kind of test it out. You don't go full speed into something you know could be bad. You go and you kind of just cruise and check it out. And so you fly. So in that particular spot from Waiting for the Weekend, my very first battery, I just took off and kind of went down underneath that car park and cruised and made sure that the video was good and didn't have any control link issues. And then I went and dove it a couple times to see how the transition from above to below, because not only do you have issues with the RF, but you also have issues with the lighting change. If it's really bright outside and you're going inside and outside of buildings, that transition period can be difficult. So I'll fly those transitions and see how they go. So like I said, I cruised underneath, the video was good, didn't have control link issues. I came down from above to watch how the lighting transition was, and it was fine. I had good visuals the whole way through. So at that point, then I proceeded to do more dives and get more aggressive with it, because I knew that I wasn't going to have a control link issue, and I knew that the video was going to be good, and I knew that the lighting was good so that I could see everything while I was doing it. So once I worked out all those issues, I just went for it. All right, next. Charles Carpenter. I'm new to this hobby and would like to see you do a video on the top 10 beginner mistakes. Whew. All right. Also, if I don't get to your question, don't feel bad, because I'm stealing ideas from my comments section for future videos. So your question could be turned into an entire video. But this one, I'm not sure how to turn into a whole video, because top 10 beginner mistakes, I guess I could run a poll and find out what the most common mistakes are. I thought that I would just give you a couple of pieces of advice from when I started. One of the things that I was really big on was I wanted to figure out how to do everything on my own. So I didn't ask a lot of questions about tuning from Steel or Schizo. I would test things, and I had a lot of early failures. For instance, the way I mounted my receivers, I killed a lot of receiver antennas. The way I mounted my FPV antenna, I killed a lot of video transmitters. I think at one point I was going through a video transmitter every single week. Once I decided, you know what, this isn't working, and started copying some of the things that they were doing with how they were mounting their hardware, things got a lot easier. So I guess one of my big beginner mistakes was that I wanted to do everything on my own, and I didn't want to take from other people's experience. So tap into those resources in your community, learn from other people's mistakes, ask for advice. Other beginner mistakes, this is going to be controversial, but I'm going to say it. I think going with any kind of auto level mode early on is a mistake, because you end up leaning on it and you have to completely relearn how to fly. I started out in rate mode. I had what is that thing even called now? Oh, it's that itty bitty one. They had like the line of sight one and then the FPV one. I'm going to edit in the bottom what it was called, but it was like pre-Tiny Whoop little thing that you could fly around the house. It has the same flight controller as the Tiny Whoop has on it, and you could do rate mode, which was horrible, but I played around with rate mode on that. I played around with rate mode on I think there was a simulator. I think Freerider was brand new at the time. And so I messed around with rate mode prior to building my first quad enough that when I got into the field, I could kind of make my way around on the quad without dying. And I went from... And then I just kept working on it from there. Now, I still did use simulators and stuff later on to learn some like stacked tricks, like half a backflip to a roll to finish the backflip, because a lot of that's muscle motor memory. And so yeah, early on, I would practice those stacked tricks in the simulator so that I could get all of the maneuvers down before going out into the field. See, here's the problem: is a lot of this is beginner mistakes, and what's a common beginner mistake versus something I've done versus something I've seen is really hard. I guess I should have run a poll on this one. We're going to move on. I may come back to that. I may make a poll. Charles Wang asks, could you do a video on how you tune your rates? I feel like this is a little bit too simple for a video because I do it really simply. Number one, I like all axes. You know what I mean. Each one of the three axes to have the same speed at max deflection. And the speed that I like is around 1250 to 1280. That's 1280 degrees per second at full stick deflection. It's about roughly 3 full rotations per second at max. And just because that's what I've gotten used to timing wise, and it's about the fastest, the highest degrees per second that I can do without, and still be able to time my flips and rolls, and not just on a timing wise where it's like flip it and then let go, because there's those types of flips, and then there's also the kind where you watch it come around and line it up. So the 1280 is about as fast as I can continue to do that visually. So that's where I leave it. And then I personally like a whole lot of expo. So I just kind of fiddle with it until the expo curve looks the way that I like it. I would suggest your best bet is, I worked up to that, is starting out and figuring out where the highest rate that you're comfortable with, take off, go up to a high altitude, full deflection, and see if you're over rotating, and see if you can nail it right on or close to being right on every time. And if you can, then maybe you want to go a little higher. If you can't, then you're probably too high. And then look at how it feels at the center stick. Are you constantly overcorrecting, or are you being able to fly around different obstacles without making a whole bunch of small corrections? If you're making a whole bunch of small corrections, then you probably need a little bit more expo so that you have a little bit finer control near that center stick. Question from everyone ever. I get this a lot. I guess I need to put it in my parts description, is what camera angle do I run? And the answer to that is 99% of the time I use 45 degrees. With the wider FPV camera lens, I use a 2.1 from RunCam, or the GoPro lens that is on the Rotor Riot Edition RunCam Swift. I can't tell a huge difference between those two. I know that some of the newer RunCams have a new lens that may or may not be as good. I've heard some mixed reviews, but with the Rotor Riot Edition RunCam Swift, at 45 degrees of camera angle, that is as high as I can put it and still be able to see pretty well, like see the ground when I hover. So I can land it at that, and at the max angle, I can basically go from as fast or as slow as I want. At full speed, full tilt, I can still see the horizon and avoid objects. Now, that being said, because you can see a lot of that, in the past when I was running 2.8, one of my tricks would be that I would increase the camera angle so that I had to go faster. So if I found myself in a rut where I was flying somewhere but I just wasn't really going fast enough, I didn't have enough energy in my flying, I would increase the camera angle and go that much faster and just make the video more exciting. So sometimes if I'm at the 45 degree angle and I'm just not feeling it, I'm not going fast enough, I don't have that energy, I will slam it to as high as it will go on my quad. And what that does is it forces me to fly at crazy speeds. I don't recommend that for everybody, but it's a little technique that I use occasionally. But it's more of a technique to get me into a different mind space than it is for achieving things on the quad. All right, next. Critter FPV. Have you ever tried playing around with the shutter speed and ISO lock? You can get some really nice and clean footage. Now, this is in reference to the GoPro settings. I have not, because I kind of have a background in photography, and I know what the cameras are doing when they are adjusting for exposure with the ISO and variable ISO and changing the shutter speed. And on a camera like the GoPro, it doesn't have an aperture to change. So the only things that it can change are those two variables. Now, so what happens when you lock down the ISO and lock down the shutter speed? In that scenario, when you go out and fly, then it can't adjust the exposure. Now, that would be a great thing if you're setting up your GoPro on a tripod on a fixed scene, because you know what the exposure is. You can set it and be like, that's great, I don't want it to adjust. Because if you ever watch like camera, you may even see it on this, it'll make auto exposure adjustments and the whole scene will get a little brighter and a little bit darker depending on like a cloud blowing in or a hand motion or something crazy. And so if you want to have your GoPro hard mounted looking at one thing, that's a great way to keep it from doing those little adjustments. Now, when we're flying these things, it's seeing all sorts of scene adjustments. It might look up right at the sun, and then all of a sudden it's pointed down at the ground, and then the next thing you know, you're flying underneath trees where it's shady. It needs to be able to make those adjustments to the exposure. Yes, you can lock it down so it looks great in the sun, but then as soon as you go underneath those trees, it's going to be black. Or you can set it to where it looks great in the shade underneath the tree, but if you go out into the sun or the clouds clear out, then it's going to look like crap. So I just let the camera do its thing and adjust for that. Does it always do a great job? Nope. But 90% of the time it does a pretty good job, and I'm okay with that. Next, Dude Skin FPV. Amazing as usual, dude. Enjoyed the shop. Very jealous. What's your opinion on the GoPro Lens over 2.1, etc.? I use 2.1 now and enjoy seeing a little more around me than the GoPro Lens, but can't say it was night and day difference. 2.8 sucked. Yes, 2.8 did suck. And Schizo, you are wrong. Just get a new lens, buddy. All right. Let's see. So, difference between 2.1 and the GoPro Lens. This is the problem with these monikers of 2.1, 2.5, because the GoPro Lens is technically a 2.5, but it's built around a different sized camera sensor. And so on RunCam Swift, it does not perform the same way as a 2.5 lens would. Now, so I've seen 2.1 lenses that are crazy fisheye, and I've seen 2.1 lenses that look kind of mild to me. I've seen 1.8 lenses that were a narrower field of view than the 2.1 lens that I currently use. I got a bunch of 2.1 lenses from one stock when I found one that I liked. The difference between my 2.1 lens and the GoPro lens is it's negligible. There's very little difference. If the 2.1 lens you're flying has distortion around the corners, that's something that I don't care for. I tend to crash. It messes me up. I don't know why. I just can't fly with it. The 2.1 lens that I have is very close to what they call rectilinear, which means that there's no curvation around the corners. There might be a little bit, but I've seen some that is just really bad. It looks like you're flying through a GoPro with Super View on. So 2.1 to the GoPro lens that Steele has talked about in his videos, I don't see a huge difference. Other people argue that, but I don't see it. Moving on. Tony Saliba. I'm in Australia and want to ask about the different size plugs on FPV cameras like the RunCam Swift. It's a 3-pin, but the camera in my Eachine Wizard is 3-pin as well, but slightly smaller. Is there an easy way to open those plugs, or is it easier just to cut and solder the wires? All right, I open and close those plugs all the time because some cameras I've had 4-pin, some have 3, some change the order, some do other weird things. I know the early Tramps that I had the wrong pin out for for the cameras. So an easy way to change that is if you look at it on one side, there's a little plastic tab, and you can take a X-Acto knife or a hobby knife and just kind of get in underneath that little piece of plastic and pull the wire out, and you can swap them around between different plugs. Now, that being said, there are different types of those little white plastic things that have different pins that aren't compatible. Really, the only way to check is to pull out the pins from two different ones and check. If this isn't enough, leave me a comment and I will just show myself doing it the next time I'm doing a build or something. But it's really easy. There's only one side where you can see the metal, and you'll see the little plastic tab that holds it in place. Just take your X-Acto knife, put it under there, pull up the tab, slide out the wire, and you can redo it a bunch of times. So yes, the pins in the Runcam Swift and the pins in, say, the Lumineer HS1177, those pins are not interchangeable. And there's some other products that use the pins that are like the Lumineer ones that use the locking clips, which the locking clips are nice, but I'm not sure that I prefer. I kind of like being able to interchange different things more than I like the locking. It's personal opinion. 6 one way, half a dozen the other. Your mileage may vary. Next, CMB FPV. Sick footage. Some color correction would make it all that much better. How is this, CMB? I am now shooting in, what do they call this? S-Log on the Sony, and I'm going to try my hand at doing some color correction afterwards. So hopefully this isn't all gray. If it's all gray, I failed. If not, I'm dabbling. I'm dabbling. Stick with me. Henry FPV. Hi, Stingy. It's the 11-year-old boy. Nice video. Did you go to Embry-Riddle? Nice CRJs. Do you like visual or FPV more? All right, Henry. I think I already answered this, but I wanted to give you a shout out. So I did not go to Embry-Riddle. I know a lot of pilots did. I went to Middle Tennessee State, which is another very popular aviation college. That's where I got all of my ratings. And I personally prefer FPV. It's more fun. I can be more risky. It's just more fun and exciting, plain and simple. So, Samsonite Mike, nice flying, man. Those loops for the trees was nice. I do have a question for you. What frame are you using, and why do you use that frame versus, say, the Alien type frame? Good stuff, and keep them coming. All right, so frames that I use. I've used the MXP200B a lot. I've used the R5X, which is my current favorite frame, a lot. The X-Hover Element, I like it a lot. It is very similar to a QAVR or the Alien, and I don't mean that in a similar copied sort of way. It's just that the what do they call it? Hybrid X. So you got the longer body and as little of a H frame as possible. So what I like about the Alien, the QAVR, the Element is that it's really easy to set up your GoPro and get the props out of the shot and not have a crazy high GoPro camera angle. What I don't like about them is they just don't fly as good as a true X. I love the way that the MXP200B and the R5X handle in comparison. Can you do the same things with both frames? Yeah. But there are certain quirks with a non-true X that in certain scenarios it just does things a little bit differently. And if you know that it's going to do those things, you can avoid it. But with the X, you don't have to avoid anything. You just do exactly what you want, and the frame responds how you expect it to. So that being said, the difference between the MXP200B and the R5X, one's a unibody, one's not. That's the big difference. I liked unibodies in the past, but I'm finding that having multiple plates on the bottom, it dampens out some of the oscillations that you get, and you don't need as much filtering, which in my opinion is better. If you can get away with less filtering, then you have a better flying quad. So I go with the R5X. Am I right in all that? Probably not, but that's what I think, and that's what I like to fly. So, next. All right, Guillermo Nespola. I know I mispronounced that. Sorry, buddy. Yo, Stingy, let us know how you met with Mr. Steele and Mr. Schizo. Well, Steele and Schizo were flying in Atlanta before I was. I got into FPV, and then while early on, I caught their channels and realized that they were Atlanta guys. And I went to a local meetup here. They weren't there, but everybody at the meetup said, you really need to meet these guys, and so I was kind of excited about it. And the first time I met up with them was there's a guy here, Todd Wall, that he organizes races under DRC and some other different stuff. He had an event where he was getting all the local FPV guys together to talk about setting up racing in Atlanta, and that was the first time that I met Steele and Schizo, and we kind of hit it off, flew together a couple of times, and next thing you knew, I was talking to him all the time and flying with him all the time, and that was just our regular group of guys. We were kind of, I'm about the same age as Schizo. We have similar backgrounds, all of us, skateboarding, horror movies, punk rock, different, and so we just kind of had the same, what's the word I'm looking for? The same cultural touchstones from growing up, and got along really good and flew together all the time. So that's that. I guess that's gonna about finish us off for today. Thanks for coming, guys. I'm gonna be back again tomorrow with another video. I think it's going to still be raining, so I have no idea what I'm going to do tomorrow. You know what? Leave me a suggestion in the comments for what I should do for a video tomorrow. I need ideas, guys. This video a day. I'm running through all my ideas as fast as I can. Okay, guys, I really hope that you enjoyed today's video, and if you did, please click that like button, subscribe, come back again tomorrow, check out what I've got going on for you, and check out some of these other videos if you got some time. Hope you enjoyed it, and we'll see you again tomorrow. Thanks. Let's go.